Welcome to the second video in how to set up a Raspberry Pi to control a KNX system using Node.js. In this video, which builds on the previous one, we're going to establish the basic architecture for our application, and we're going to run our first sort of hello world where we'll be surfacing KNX bus events in Node, so we can actually sort of start using them in our Node application that we're going to build. So just the objectives for this video: we're going to set up the basic folder structure in which we're going to house our application and all our different packages and files. We're going to download our first Node package from npm, a package called EIBD. And what this is a wrapper which Node uses to interact with that low-level software which we installed from Michael's tech blog in the first video. And that allows Node to interact with that, with all of that, and surfaces the underlying data up the stack. Then we're going to download a couple of JavaScript files which I've written, which will initialize the EIBD and will act as like the central element for our application. We're going to work with these files in Text Wrangler on the Pi, and you can see how to do that. And then we're going to run the application and see the KNX bus events in the terminal. So that's basically listening to the KNX bus, and the Raspberry Pi will be listening to the KNX bus and then surfacing those events in the terminal. So this is just the sort of high-level architecture. We have our KNX system which is installed in the house. So we've got our switches, temperature gauges, actuators and so on, and we're connected to the bus using a USB interface, and that links directly to the Raspberry Pi. And on the Raspberry Pi we've got EIBD installed from Michel's tech blog in the previous video, and also Node installed here. And in this video what we're going to do is we're going to install EIBD from Node Package Manager, which is this kind of interfacing layer, and then we're also going to install a couple of files which I've written and work with those in JavaScript. Work with those in Text Wrangler. So this is the basic folder setup which we're hoping to achieve. In our home /pi folder, we're going to create a new folder called KNX, which is going to house our application, and then in that we're going to store app.js, which is our sort of central application file which we'll be running, which will call all the other files further down here, and will kind of act as the central element of our application. And then in the KNX folder, we're going to have another folder called Node Modules, which is going to be created for us, and that's going to house the EIBD module, which we'll have downloaded from npm, and also our kind of initializing file KNX _EIBD, which is available on my Git. So what we're going to do in this video is make a directory, sort out the directory structures defined before, and we're going to do that very simply by we're going to SSH into the Raspberry Pi, and then we're going to make a directory in the Pi directory called KNX, and then we're going to move into that KNX directory with the cd command. I should just mention that the different font here are the commands that you will type in to the terminal. So this makes the directory, this moves into the directory, and then we're going to install our first EIBD module on the Raspberry Pi, and we're going to do that using the command npm EIBD, and that will create the node module folder in the KNX folder and puts the EIBD package in there. And then you need to copy and download a couple of scripts from my GitHub, the app.js and the EIBD _KNX.js, and put one of those in. Well, we work with those in Text Wrangler, and you download them to your local machine, and then we can load them, save them into the right position in the folder structure using Text Wrangler. But effectively we need the app.js file to be in the KNX folder, and the EIBD _KNX file to be in the Node Modules folder. And this is a link to my GitHub where those files are available. So yeah, okay, so I'm just going to drop out here and we'll have a little look at some of those. So I guess the first thing to look at is Node Package Manager, npm. So this is a sort of a repository for a whole stack of different really useful packages that work with Node. And if we type in EIBD, there's a whole set here, but this is the one that we're going to be using. And so yeah, this package, it's a little bit, I struggled with it initially, but here is the all the documentation, but the initialization script which I've written works with this, and it seems to be pretty stable. I've had it running now for about a year or so, and it very rarely falls over. So yeah, it's well recommended. Does everything, but is a little bit obtuse at times. So we'll work through that anyway. So you'll need to download that into the Node modules file. So we'll do this through SSH. Let me just close this and start a new shell. There we go. So first of all, I'm going to SSH into my Raspberry Pi. And we'll list out the file. So we're in the Pi directory here, and we can see that I have the KNX folder. So we're going to cd into KNX. I've already made this, obviously, because and in here we have our app.js and the Node modules, and we'll come to some of these other files later on. But then if we cd into Node modules, you can see that we have EIBD in there and KNX EIBD.js in there. So if we go back up to you can run the application. So here we have our application app.js. We can run that just by typing this command, and this will run the application. So how do we work with the files? Well, I find it easiest to work with the files on the Raspberry Pi using Text Wrangler, and that is because Text Wrangler has an OpenFOAM FTP/SFTP server, which we can effectively find our Raspberry Pi. So this is the same IP address. The user is Pi and the password, and we can connect in here, and we can see our different files. So here we have our app.js file here in the KNX folder, and I can just open that, and I can now I'll get rid of that one. I can now work with this file. I've tried to put as much a large amount of comments in here just to give people an underlying feeling for how this was created. So in this particular application, we're just going to require the KNX _EIBD, which basically just runs this JavaScript file that we have in our Node modules. So I'm just going to comment out all of these other applications, which we'll build later, and then we can save that. So once your file looks a little bit like this, we can save to FTP server. We just save that, and that's now saved to the Raspberry Pi. We'll do the same thing, but we'll open up the EIBD file. So that's in Node modules, and there you can see KNX EIBD. Now, what this file does is it works with EIBD, the package that we've just imported from npm, and it also sets up a event emitter called the KNX _emitter, which is a new event emitter. So this first function initializes the link to the EIBD, and you can see we'll get an EIB successfully connected if that all works fine. And then this second function listens in, and then for every time a package of data is seen in the KNX on the KNX bus, it packages those up as a JSON. Well, it packages the data up, so you can see here we're creating a KNX JSON object with source, the destination, the type of data, the value, and the time, and then that's packaged up and sent out. It's emitted by our KNX event emitter as an event called bus event, and so that kind of then spreads out across the Node application. I'll just give you an idea of how that works. So this is the Node event emitter. So in our instance, what's happening is we're getting a KNX event on the bus. So for example, someone switching on a light. The function that we've just looked at is seeing that, and then it's emitting that event out, and it's that event has a name, in which case we call it bus_event, and it also has a stack of data packaged with it, which we can use later off, and that kind of then permeates across the application, and you can set up listeners around the application to listen for these events. So, for example, when an event called bus event occurs, then event listener 1 fires, and that will do something. Maybe an event listener 3 is also listening to bus event named events, and then that will do something, but it'll do something else. So this is why Node's really nice, in that you can kind of compartmentalize your functionality, and then have this kind of central event being emitted. And of course, these can emit events as well. So you can then do something and emit another event, to go off and do something else, and so on. So it really allows your code to be nicely structured. So returning to the code, we've set up this function here called group socket listen, which connects to the KNX bus, and any events that are occurring on the KNX bus, it emits those as our KNX emitter, and that they're packaged up as bus events with that data package involved, and that kind of disseminates them out. And then we're also creating another function here which sends data to the bus, so we can effectively do the opposite. So we can send data to any destination that we're interested in. And down here, what we're doing is we're calling group socket listen to set up that connection and establish this event emitter, and then we're exporting these to both the event emitter, the KNX event emitter, so that can be used so we can post listeners around, and we're exporting the center bus function. So they're being exported slightly differently. So we've got a function called write to bus, which other packages will be able to use, and we've also got this KNX event which has been sort of exported and will be available for use by any other packages. So now we've run through the basics of the code. What we're going to do is run this application, and what you'll notice here is that whenever this event emitter is firing, we're going to console log the source and destination and values to the application. So what we anticipate to see when we run app.js is app.js is going to call, is going to require the KNX EIBD script, which will run this script, and in it we'll have this kind of console log. So we'll have a few things that show the connections being established, and then for every bit of data that's occurring on the KNX bus, that will be console logged in using Node. So we've kind of established what we want to do here. So if we go back to our terminal then, and we're in our KNX folder, and we can see our app.js. We're going to run that with node.app.js. So you can see here we've got our welcome line, so it's showing that it's running. It's connecting to the IBD server at localhost. It's opening the connection, and then it says we're getting the successful connection. And here you can see bus events beginning to be written out. So what this means is we've completed that stack. We're actually writing those events using Node, and we're emitting those events out so that all of our other applications will be able to use those. And then to stop that, you just press Control C and break out of that. And so that concludes the second video. And in the next video, we'll move on to doing some more interesting functions and functionality. But that shows you the sort of the basics of the stack, and everything else now really is all written in JavaScript, and is just working off this basic underlying architecture which we've established. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Any questions or comments, please post them up in the comments section, and I'll try and address them in future videos. Thanks for listening. Bye bye.